The notary's office smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. There were 3 chairs on my side of the table and only one on his. I remember thinking that was strange, like they'd already decided how many people were going to show up to watch me sign my life away. My son was already seated when I walked in. He didn't stand up. He used to stand up when I walked into a room. His father taught him that. Gerald spent 31 years teaching that boy small things, how to shake a hand, how to hold a door, how to stand when a woman enters. After Gerald passed, I watched those lessons fall away one by one, like pages out of a book nobody wanted to finish reading. My name is Beverly. I'm 73 years old and I've lived in the same house in Knoxville, Tennessee for 42 years. I raised 2 children in that house. I buried a husband from that house. I planted a dogwood tree in the backyard the spring after Gerald died because I needed something to do with my hands, and now that tree is taller than the fence. I need you to understand what that house means before I tell you what my son tried to do with it. It started the way these things always start, not with a fight, not with something obvious you can point to and say, "There, that's when it went wrong." It started with concern, with phone calls, with my son driving up from Atlanta on a Sunday and sitting across from me at my own kitchen table with that particular look on his face, the one that meant he'd been talking to his wife. Her name is Candace. She has very straight teeth, and she's never once asked me a question she didn't already know the answer to. "Mom," my son said, his name is Marcus, he's 44 years old. He sells commercial real estate. "We've been worried about you." I was drinking my coffee. I'd made an effort to, the way I always do when someone visits. Candace had declined. "I'm fine," I said. "You fell in February." I slipped on the porch step. "I told you I've been meaning to fix that step for years. You broke your wrist." "I know I broke my wrist, Marcus." It was my wrist. He did that thing where he exhaled through his nose and looked at the window. Candace put her hand on his arm like she was steadying him for something difficult. I watched the whole little performance and drank my coffee. "We've been looking at some options," he said, "for your long-term care." That was the first time I heard that phrase, long-term care. It has a way of making you feel like a problem that needs solving. They had a brochure. Of course they had a brochure. Candace pulled it out of her purse like she'd been waiting all morning for exactly this moment. Hearthstone of East Tennessee, photos of smiling white-haired women doing watercolors, a dining room with cloth napkins, a man in a cardigan playing chess by a window. "It's very highly rated," Candace said. I looked at the brochure. I looked at my kitchen, the window over the sink where I've watched 42 springs come in, the hook on the wall where Gerald's old volunteer's cap still hangs because I can't bring myself to move it. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. Marcus leaned forward. "Mom, the house is too big for one person, the maintenance alone. I manage the maintenance. You pay people to manage it. That's how managing works, Marcus." He wasn't wrong, exactly. The house needed things. The gutters, the furnace, the porch step. I paid Kevin Alderman's son to mow the lawn every 2 weeks from April through October, and I paid a plumber the previous winter when the pipes in the basement made a sound I didn't trust. But I made those calls. I wrote those checks. I decided. That's the part they kept leaving out of the conversation, that I decided. They came back in April, and again in June. Each time with new information, new brochures, new carefully worded concerns. My daughter Sherelle called from Portland and said Marcus had talked to her, and did I know how hard it was for them to worry about me so far away? I told her I hadn't asked anyone to worry. "Mom, you're being stubborn. I'm being myself. Sometimes those look the same." She sighed. They all sighed. It became the soundtrack of that year. My children's sighs, carrying across phone lines and kitchen tables, each one a small editorial on the way I was choosing to live. In August, Marcus asked me to consider giving him power of attorney. "Just for emergencies," he said. "Just so if something happens, we can act quickly without a lot of legal back and forth." I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either, which is the thing I've turned over in my mind more times than I can count. I said I'd think about it, I said, let me talk to someone. I said, give me some time. He said, of course. Take all the time you need. He'd already printed the forms. I want to say I knew something was wrong. I want to tell you there was a moment where I felt the ground shift and I paid attention to it. But the truth is I was tired that year. Gerald had been gone for 4 years, and grief doesn't leave you all at once. It thins out slowly, like fog burning off in the morning. And you think you're fine until you're standing in the cereal aisle at Kroger and you reach for his brand by accident and you have to put it back and walk to your car and sit there for 10 minutes before you can drive. I was tired, and Marcus was my son, and I trusted him the way you trust your own hands, without thinking about it, because why would you ever have to think about it? I signed the papers in September. The calls changed after that. More frequent, more specific. He started asking about the utility bills, the property taxes, whether I'd gotten the furnace serviced. I answered because I thought that's what the arrangement was, him helping me keep track of things. In November, he mentioned a buyer. What buyer? I said. For the house, Mom. I've had a colleague reach out. The market in Knoxville is strong right now, and your neighborhood especially, you could get well over asking. I'm not selling the house. Just think about it. The money alone would cover years at Hearthstone, and you'd still have plenty left over. We could put it in a trust. Marcus. What? I am not selling the house. A pause. A long one. Okay, he said. I hear you. He did not hear me. I found out from my neighbor Gwen. She's been next door for 20 years, and she has the particular gift of knowing everything that happens on our street approximately 48 hours before it officially occurs. She knocked on my door on a Wednesday morning in February with a look on her face I'd never seen before. Careful and sad and uncertain in the way people get when they have to tell you something they wish they didn't know. Beverly, she said, there's a listing. A what? She had her phone. She showed me 4417 Magnolia Ridge Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee. My address, my house. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, original hardwood floors, dogwood tree in back. Seller motivated. Offers welcome. The listing had been up for 6 days. I stood in my own doorway and looked at a photograph of my living room, my couch, my curtains, my grandmother's clock on the mantel, slightly out of focus in the background, and I felt something move through me that I don't have a good word for. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter than anger and colder, like the moment before you understand what you're looking at. He listed it, I said. Gwen put her hand on my arm. I'm so sorry, honey. I thanked her. I closed the door. I sat down at the kitchen table and I did not cry, which surprised me. I thought about crying. I waited for it. Instead, what came was something much more useful. I picked up the phone and called a lawyer. Her name is Patricia Odom. She has an office on Market Street, and she has the kind of calm that isn't coldness, the kind built out of having seen a great many things and decided not to be rattled by any of them. I explained everything. The POA, the listing, the calls. She listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. When I finished, she set down her pen and said, He overstepped. Can he do this? I asked. Legally? The power of attorney you signed gives him authority to act on your behalf in financial matters. But there's a critical limit. It doesn't authorize him to act against your interests. Selling your primary residence without your consent for his benefit is a breach of his fiduciary duty. She folded her hands. Also, in this matters, you are mentally competent. You can revoke this POA at any time. Then I'd like to revoke it. I had the paperwork ready before you finished your coffee. She filed the revocation that afternoon. She also sent a cease and desist to Marcus's real estate contact, and she informed the listing agent that the property owner had not authorized the sale and any transaction would be legally contested. I drove home and made myself dinner. Chicken and rice, nothing special. I sat at my kitchen table and ate and looked at Gerald's cap on the hook by the door, and I said out loud, to nobody, not yet. Marcus called that evening. I let it ring. He called again the next morning. I answered that one. Mom, I think there's been a misunderstanding. There hasn't been, I said. Patricia Odom is being extremely aggressive, and I just want to explain Marcus. I waited until he stopped talking. I revoked the power of attorney. The listing is being pulled. And I want you to know that I am not confused, I am not fragile, and I am not going to pretend this didn't happen. Silence. I was trying to help you, he said. And the worst part was I could hear that he believed it, at least a little. That's the thing about this kind of betrayal. It doesn't always come from pure selfishness. Sometimes it comes from someone deciding they know better than you what your life should look like, and deciding so firmly that they stop asking. I know you think that, I said, but helping me would have meant asking me. I hung up. My hand was very steady. I noticed that. I want to tell you about my granddaughter because she's important to this story and she doesn't get talked about enough in the telling of it. Her name is Nora. She's 26, Marcus's daughter from his first marriage, and she's been living in Knoxville for 2 years now, finishing her nursing degree. She started coming over on Sunday afternoons last spring. Initially, I think out of some combination of proximity and politeness, and then out of something else. Habit. Maybe affection. She'd bring cornbread from the place on Cumberland she knew I liked, and we'd sit on the back porch and watch the birds. And she'd tell me about her clinicals, and I'd tell her about the neighborhood before she was born, when the Hendersons still lived next door and Gerald coached Little League on Saturday mornings. She didn't know about any of it, the listing, the POA, the lawyer, until I told her. On a Sunday in March, on the back porch with the dogwood just starting to bud, when I finished, she set down her cornbread and looked at the yard for a long time. "Dad did this," she said. Not a question. Yes. Another long silence. Then, "I'm sorry, Grandma. It's not your fault. I know, I'm still sorry." She asked if she could do anything. I told her she already was. She was sitting here, she was listening, she was treating me like someone worth listening to. She looked at me like that landed somewhere real. "You're not going anywhere," she said. "No," I said. "I'm not. Patricia had a question for me about 3 weeks after we filed the revocation." "What do you want the outcome to be?" she asked. We were sitting in her office, afternoon light coming through the blinds and slats. "Not legally, not strategically. What do you want?" I thought about it. "I want my son to understand that what he did wasn't help," I said, "and I want to know that this house is protected, not just for now, for good." She nodded. "Let's talk about your will." I hadn't updated it since Gerald died. It left everything to Marcus and Cheryl in equal shares, which had seemed right when I signed it and felt, now, like something signed by a person I used to be. We talked for a long time. About Nora. About what I actually wanted the next chapter of my life to look like. About what it means to leave something behind. Not just an asset, not just a structure, but a place that has held your life. At the end of it, I made some changes. I'm not going to tell you exactly what those changes are. That's between me and Patricia and, eventually, whoever it concerns. What I will tell you is that Marcus is still in the will. He's my son. I'm not interested in punishment. But the house goes to Nora. I told her on the back porch, again. Dogwood in full bloom this time, white flowers like little paper stars all the way up to the fence line. She started to say I didn't have to, and I stopped her. "I know I don't have to," I said. "That's the point. I want to, and I'm the one who decides what I want." She nodded. She understood. She's 26 and she understood in about 4 seconds what it took her father 44 years to miss entirely. Marcus came to see me in May. He drove up without calling, which he hadn't done since he was a teenager. I saw his car in the driveway and I stood at the window for a moment before I opened the door. He looked tired. That was the first thing I noticed. Like the certainty had gone out of him. He sat at the kitchen table and I made coffee for 2. And this time he took some. "I talked to Patricia," he said. "I know. She's very thorough. Yes." He turned his mug in his hands. Outside, Kevin Alderman's son was mowing the neighbor's yard, that familiar smell of cut grass coming in through the window I'd cracked open. I thought I was protecting you, Marcus said. I know you did, but I wasn't. No, I said, you weren't. He was quiet for a while. I let him be quiet. I've learned in 73 years that some things need silence around them before they can be said. I'm sorry, Mom. I looked at my son. I thought about who he was when he was small, the way he used to fall asleep in the car, and I'd carry him inside. How he called me to the window once at age 7 because he'd seen a fox in the backyard and he wanted to make sure I'd seen it too. I thought about all the years of him and what they meant and what they didn't excuse. I know you are, I said. I believe that. Do you forgive me? I thought about that for a longer time than he was comfortable with. I could tell. He shifted in his chair. I'm working on it, I said. That's the honest answer. He nodded. He didn't push. That was the first thing he'd done in a year that felt like the son I knew. It's July now. I'm sitting on my back porch in Knoxville, and the dogwood I planted the year after Gerald died is full and green and tall, and it drops a little shade on the corner of the yard in the late afternoon that wasn't there 5 years ago. Nora came over yesterday. She brought sweet tea and a library book she thought I'd like, and we sat out here until the fireflies came on and the air went soft, the way Tennessee summer air does around 8 o'clock. She asked me if I was happy. I thought about the question, not the easy answer, the true one. I'm here, I said. This is my house. I know what I have and I know what I want and I know who I am. I looked out at the yard, at the dogwood, at the fence and the sky behind it going pink at the edges. Yes, I said. I'm happy. She nodded like that was the right answer. I think it was. There's something I want to say before I'm done, because I've been sitting with it for months, and it's the thing the experience taught me that I didn't expect. Nobody warned me about this. Not the doctor who told me to be careful on icy surfaces, not the financial advisor Gerald and I saw when we retired, not the books about aging gracefully that well-meaning people give you when you turn 70. Nobody said, watch out for the people who love you, because sometimes love decides it knows better than you, and that's when it stops being love and starts being control. I should have called Patricia the day Marcus walked in with that brochure, not because I needed to fight, but because I needed someone in my corner who was working for me, not for a version of me that was easier to manage. If you are in this house, in this life, and someone is handing you papers to sign and telling you it's for your own good, please, call a lawyer first. Call Patricia Odom if you're in Knoxville. Call someone, not because your family is wrong about loving you, but because love isn't a legal document, and a legal document needs someone who is specifically, professionally, and exclusively on your side. I am Beverly. I am 73 years old. I live at 4417 Magnolia Ridge Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee, in the same house I've lived in for 42 years. Gerald's cap is still on the hook by the door. The porch step is fixed. The dogwood is blooming. I'm not going anywhere. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened. Not just the paperwork, not just the listing, not just the look on Marcus's face when Patricia's letter arrived. I mean the whole shape of it, how it started, why it was allowed to go as far as it did, and what part I played in letting it. That last part is the one people don't talk about. Everyone wants to talk about what Marcus did, and yes, what he did was wrong. I'm not softening that. But I also sat at my own kitchen table for the better part of a year and watched the signs and told myself it was concern. It was love. It was my son trying his best in a clumsy way. I made excuses because making excuses was easier than accepting that someone I loved had decided, quietly and with great certainty, that my life was a problem he had the right to solve. That's what I keep coming back to. Not the betrayal itself, but the silence before it. Mine. There's a kind of courage that nobody prepares you for. The courage to trust your own judgment when the people around you are very confidently telling you that your judgment can't be trusted. When someone says you're being stubborn often enough and with enough love in their voice, you start to wonder if they're right. That wondering is where the danger lives. Not in conflict, not in confrontation, but in the slow erosion of your own certainty. I was 73 years old. I had raised 2 children, buried a husband, managed a household for 4 decades, made 10,000 decisions large and small without anyone's help, and somehow I had arrived at a place where I was second-guessing myself because my son sighed at the right moments. What I learned, and I mean learned in the way you learn things that cost you something, is that clarity is not the same as stubbornness. Knowing what you want is not the same as being difficult. And the moment someone tries to convince you that your preferences are symptoms of a problem, that's the moment to pay very close attention. Nora understood this without being told. She's 26, and she sat on my back porch and listened and didn't once suggest that maybe her father had a point. She just asked what I needed. That is a kind of intelligence that has nothing to do with age. It's the intelligence of respecting someone enough to let them define their own situation. Marcus is not a villain. I want to be clear about that. He's a man who let his own anxiety become someone else's constraint, and he's going to have to live with the knowledge of what that looked like. That's its own consequence, and it's a real one. The distance between us now is not punishment. It's just the natural result of what happened, the space that opens up when trust is broken and is being slowly, carefully rebuilt. I changed my will. I fixed the porch step. I called Patricia when I needed to, and Gwen when I needed something different, and Nora on Sunday afternoons when I just needed someone to sit with. That's what I tell anyone in a house like mine, with a son like mine, holding papers they haven't read yet. Trust is not the same as compliance. Love is not the same as surrender. And you are never too old, too tired, or too alone to pick up the phone and find someone who is entirely professionally on your side. The dogwood is still blooming. I'm still here.